Today, we're going to be talking about the surprising truth about rewards in today's marketplace. And today's session is brought to you by Bucket List Rewards, the #1 employee rewards and recognition program. It's also brought to you by the John Ingham Strategic HR Academy. And I'll briefly introduce myself. I am, as you know, Jason Lindstrom. I'm the CEO of Bucket List Rewards and Recognition. Bucket List Rewards is an employee rewards and recognition platform. We've worked with a variety of organizations, everything from Fortune 100s all the way to startups. And we've had a chance to work with organizations like the Royal Bank of Canada, NBA teams like Orlando Magic, the NFL, universities like Northwestern, healthcare companies, and many, many others. But more importantly, I'd like to welcome John Ingham. John is an insight-based HR and organizational effectiveness consultant who focuses on developing innovative approaches to people management in order to create competitive advantage. He's worked as an international HR director for Ernst & Young and a director in human capital consulting for Buck. He's the author of The Social Organization. He's also been a co-author of Building Better HR Departments. And he's contributed chapters on rewards to two ASTD, ATD books for talent management called For Love of Money. John is frequently recognized as a thought leader and has been #7 in HR Magazine's UK list of HR thinkers and a top 100 global HR technology influencer for human resource executives. So John, welcome, sir. That is a heck of an intro. Also, I've had over the past couple of weeks, the chance to get to know John a little bit better, and he's an absolute pleasure to work with, just a real gentleman. So welcome, sir. We're so excited to have you to present today.
Thank you, Jason. Wonderful to be with you all. And I'm sure there must be some people from the UK and Europe in the group. Perhaps we tend to be a little bit quieter at times. I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to keep jumping right along here. And so as always, we're on a mission to help people leaders build the best cultures possible. And the intent for today is to have everybody who's in attendance to walk away with sort of 1 to 3 takeaways. And at the end of the session, I'd love to ask you what your favorite tactic, tool, tip, or theory was. And with that in mind, here's just some of the topics we're going to be covering. We're going to be talking about, of course, the truth. We're going to be sharing ideas around what the drivers for change are. We're going to be talking about how to aligning with new ways of organizational thinking, personalizing to meet individual needs, tailoring for and within a particular organization. And ultimately, as I said before, we hope that everybody walks away with some really great practical tips. But having said all that, I'd love to turn it over to John to walk us through the next few slides.
Thank you very much, Jason. So wonderful to be with you all. Thanks for joining the webinar. Yes, so well, I don't need to say anything else about myself because that was a very comprehensive introduction. So I work across the full area of strategic HR, and so I'm not a reward specialist, but this is one of my passions because I do believe, well, that many other areas of HR have transformed over the last couple of decades, and with the exception of certain areas like recognition and so on, I don't think reward has to the same extent, and I do think it needs to. So this thing about the truth was the title we came up with for the webinar, because organizations have been doing some really smart things in the pandemic, post-pandemic, as so much has changed. So, many organizations, well, obviously responding in reward terms as well as more broadly to flexible and hybrid working. The big issue, very topical issue for many organizations around geographically based pay, making salary adjustments to respond to sort of key changes in particular markets and so on. So there's been a lot of sort of transactional changes taking place, important changes. But I'm just not sure we've sort of got to the truth of what the real issue is. And particularly at the moment, in terms of the great resignation, or what I think is really a sort of a great renewal or a great reshuffle. People have been thinking very seriously about what they want to achieve from their lives and so on. And even if you look at Anthony Klotz's who came up with the term the Great Resignation. His description of that is, people are thinking about what sort of meaning they're creating from their lives, what sort of changes do they want. And I'm not sure that the focus in rewards has really sort of focused on those areas, and is providing this sort of deeper desire for meaning that really should be regard as we potentially enter the Great Recession, for example. We should have core approaches and an embedded reward philosophy to what we're doing, which will be useful to us as we sort of progress into an up or down economy or whatever. And there are some drivers which underpin a lot of the different things that we're seeing in life. And in particular, I'm suggesting key drivers for change, and the confluence between those drivers is really causing some significant changes. So Jason, on the next slide. So my suggestion, the three key changes: a move towards a much more people-centric approach, changing organization forms, and, as pretty much always, the use of digital technology sort of underpinning those. So I do think digital is important, but I'm not going to focus on those this time. I'm going to talk more deeply about the sort of changes going on, particularly around people centricity and organization changes. So on the next slide, this is sort of my key overview of what I think is happening in terms of the way that we organize people and work to achieve business results. And the title here, I've used this idea of debundling or deconstructing because, well, one of the other areas of changes in reward, which I think is now leading lots of organizations to think about how do we transform reward, is the debundling that's taken place in performance management, again, often associated, enabled through the use of digital technology. So rather than have sort of a big monolithic performance management approach that's trying to achieve lots of different objectives, a lot of organizations have sort of distilled that down to a core focus on a key objective that they think they can really achieve well, rather than lots of objectives that they probably can't. And in many organizations, that's about a clearer focus on development. So performance management focusing on enabling people to understand their skills, how they can develop, and to have conversations about that, and then enabling reward to sort of pick up the assessment and pay piece. So that debundling there. And also in organizations, you're seeing this sort of deconstruction of work. So one of the sort of key books out there at the moment, I think, is this one from John Budger around work without jobs. Now, I actually don't think jobs are going to disappear. Clearly, some people are going to be working for organizations through contingent contracts and so on, but many of us will still have jobs. It's just that the jobs themselves change to be focused on broader roles rather than this sort of tight focus around specific jobs limited within very small sort of job families and within particular grades as well. So people are going to operate on a broader remit with sort of broader roles, working in broader bands, greater mobility across the organization. And that's sort of supported by a focus from vertical specialisms to horizontal cross-functional working. So, things like hierarchy is less, it's still relevant. Again, I don't think that's going to disappear, but it's less core to the way that people work. And therefore, because traditionally the key basis for reward has often been working in a particular job family and sort of moving up a hierarchy, I don't think that can be the key determinant for people's rewards anymore. We need to think more broadly about the way that people are working in these broad roles. We're also seeing this increasing focus on skills. So I really see these sort of two things working in tandem. So firstly, we're going to be looking at how people work more broadly in broad roles. But then secondly, the more granular aspect of work comes by linking people with particular skills to particular tasks. So the whole thing becomes a lot more complex. And we need to debundle the way that we reward people, so that rather than just sort of have one overall, this is your base pay and okay, here's your bonus and so on, we start thinking about what sort of contribution are you making to the organization as a whole, and working through communities and other opportunities to impact the broader organization. How are you working through networks and introducing sort of network-based pay, democratized pay, enabling members of a network to reward each other, and particularly team-based pay. So how do we incentivize teams rather than simply individuals? And within teams, how do we incentivize individuals to support the performance of teams? So there's a number of different things that I think we need to focus on. But it does mean that reward becomes more complex, and that therefore there's a tension or there's a paradox about managing that complexity while still making reward really simple for individuals so they can understand it even more than they do today. So that's the organization side of these changes. And then we also need to think about increasing people centricity and what that means. And I've on the next slide, there's a sort of how I see us moving even more deeply into a more people-centric approach. So again, this isn't a new thing. I think organizations have been becoming increasingly people-centric for maybe 5 to 10 years, and particularly over the last couple of years of the pandemic as well. So the current focus tends to be around, well, particularly employee experience, and the experience of reward, I'd suggest, is things like recognition, the use of benefits so that people have got a sort of a longer term connection to their rewards and ongoing memories of the benefits that they've accessed, effective communication to ensure that people do understand the rewards that they're receiving as well. And then alongside the employee experience, obviously flexible and hybrid working, a big sort of part of organizations' employee value proposition these days, wellbeing, inclusion, and so on. So there's a lot going on already in people centricity, and I think we need to take that forward. So my first suggestion is the employee experience is becoming a little bit commoditized today. And I'm really taken by the ideas written by Pine and Gilmore in The Experience Age. Find experience as being the mass customization of goods or services. But then you've also got the mass customization of experience itself, which is transformation. If you really want to personalize things to individuals, experience is good, transformation is better. So that's where I think employee experience is going. So we need to go beyond offering an easy and a compelling experience and ensuring that we're offering the opportunity for people to transform themselves. And businesses need that, because if a business is going to transform, as we all do these days, we can only do that if employees are transforming themselves too. So how can we help our employees transform, and how do we use reward to do that? So that leads us towards more personalized deals, where we're agreeing with individuals what they're going to do for us and what we're going to do for them, and more personalized approaches. So more opportunities such as salary sacrifice schemes, or trading off variable for fixed pay and so on, enabling people to receive the reward in ways that make sense for them. And using that as the basis for employer branding. So rather than, as we have been during the Great Resignation in particular, using competitive pay levels to compete for the best talent, is really selling our employee value proposition, the personalization of pay that we're offering, and using that as the hook to attract and retain people. So again, it's a much more complex picture, particularly because well, we're sort of moving from an environment where we've had one key stakeholder, which is the business, and rewarding people, organizing people to achieve business aims. And now we need to think much more clearly about, yes, we're supporting the business, but we're supporting individuals as well. So that's sort of two key stakeholder groups. And then, of course, each individual is different. So therefore, you've now got a huge number of different needs that we need. So it's a much more complex picture. And again, in an interesting tensional paradox about supporting the needs of the business and supporting the needs of employees. And again, I don't think the traditional way of rewarding people is living up to where we need to go. So on the next slide, I think the key shift here is that we need both to think about what the business needs, but we also need to think about the needs of the people. So in terms of the business first, we do need to tailor. Part of a strategic approach is moving away from simple best practices. So the first thing is, we need to think about new best practices rather than the traditional best practices. And then the second thing is, how do we move on the best practice itself to a best fit approach, which is appropriate and tailored for our own particular organization? So we need to think about, what does the business need? What are the organizational capabilities or the qualities of our people that we need to provide? And how do we use reward to do that? Secondly, what are the workforce needs? So that, again, we're meeting those two aligned, separate but closely linked objectives. So that's sort of what we need to do with reward. And then we also need to think about reward principles or reward philosophy, as sort of how do we go about doing the what? How do we use rewards to meet the business and the workforce needs? So those principles, I think lots of organizations have, closely aligned with organizational values and so on. But you do need both. You need the what and the how, and then that helps you pick from the various new best practices and come up with something which is particularly best fit. And then you've got that idea of debundling on top, that for each of those main objectives, it's thinking about what is the mechanism, what is the element that I can use to meet that objective. And then, and then you've got this is a lot of complexity for 20 minutes, I know, but if we're going to transform reward, we need to respond to this. So hopefully, this is whetting your appetite, and then a little bit later I'll take you through some of the things you could do to perhaps dive more deeply into these. So the other piece of complexity is again tailoring for individuals and how we do that, which I think is going to be largely about ongoing conversations, discussions, but again clearly digital technologies can help us do sort of ongoing polling and artificial intelligence, which is already helping with coaching apps and feedback and so on. There's clearly going to be a role there to help simplify and navigate all of this as well. So that's my sort of strategic solution for you. That's how I think we need to think about the future of rewards. Jason's encouraged me to provide a couple of more sort of practical opportunities for you, and even these aren't very practical, and I apologies for that, but we are thinking about a strategic transformation of reward and a best fit solution as well, and therefore I can't just sort of say, look, you should do this, you should give up your individual incentives and move to team-based reward, because it's got to depend on your organization and the priorities of your business and of your people. So I can't do that. But this is my sort of top three, I suppose. So firstly, I think as reward practitioners, or people interested in reward and recognition and so on, you need to be invested in your company's thinking about flexible and hybrid working. Firstly, it is now on a reward agenda. People are seeing your flexibility, the level of autonomy that you give them as a part of your employee value proposition. So you can't ignore that from a reward perspective. And secondly, your reward principles I was talking about need to sort of cascade from higher level organization principles. And hybrid and flexible working, I think, is the biggest, most important, most physical, most tangible demonstration of what those principles are. So if you come up with an inflexible or just a stupid approach to hybrid working, it's going to be really difficult then to navigate that complexity, the tension between meeting the needs of individuals, meeting the needs of the business at sort of a lower, more granular level in terms of reward. We've got to get this right. And I'm just not sure that things like 3 days in the office is the right solution, because it's sort of a compromise between the need. It's, oh, business leaders, we want you here all the time. You as employees want to be home all the time. Let's compromise and you can be here 3 days. That's not satisfying anybody. We need to go beyond that and look for smart solutions that truly meet the needs of the business and truly meet the needs of employees as well. So get involved in that debate. Secondly, sort of moving towards more social pay. I mean, I did touch on this, and this isn't going to be the solution for everybody, but the point of performance in most organizations is the group, not the individual. This was the basis for my book, The Social Organization. I think we do need to move HR much more to think about human capital, the qualities of our people, from that to social capital, the quality of the way that people work together, or the qualities of the connections, conversations, relationships inside an organization. So I think reward needs to be part of that. How do you use reward to ensure, yes, that people are able to work independently, but even more so that they're encouraged to work collaboratively and to make successful teams and networks and so on. And then the third point here, aligning with individuals can be quite difficult, because lots of us aren't actually that clear about our purpose or our aspirations. And if we're not clear, the organization reward isn't really going to be able to help somebody further to help meet their needs or wants. So I think the first thing very often is helping people articulate what their meaning is. And that might be about reward, working together with our learning and development colleagues to run a workshop, or just provide a toolkit to managers so they can have conversations with their people. There are different things we can do, but helping people get that further clarity about what they want to achieve in their lives. And then, our organization and reward can step in behind that and see how we can support it. So those would be my top three. And that was that's my input. So I'll hand back over to Jason to give you more sort of I think some linked content and some more sort of practical stories linked to it as well. And hopefully I'll be able to respond to some of your questions later on. Thank you.
Yeah, John, that was fantastic. Thank you for sharing some of your insights, strategies, and thoughts around reward. I can already see in the QA window, there's a couple questions that have come in. So John is obviously an expert in this field, and I'd highly encourage you to be adding your questions. You can do it in the chat window. Q&A is a little bit easier for us to keep track of, but feel free to put them in the QA window, and we'll definitely address those at the end. It was really kind of fun when John was putting this presentation together. It was a bit of a catalyst for me. And so I'd asked him, do you mind if I kind of bolt on some additional thoughts? And I think what I heard you say, John, was linked content. So this is more our take on it based upon John's introduction. So for example, I heard the importance of aligning your rewards philosophy with your organization. And at Bucket List Rewards, we've rolled out literally hundreds of recognition programs all over the world. And I just wanted to share what we've seen a lot of companies doing to create this alignment. And I'll run through each of these tips or steps now, and I'll give you hopefully some stories and strategies to kind of deeper dive and potentially implement if you see value. So step one, you want to align your rewards and recognition program around your mission, vision, and values. It's also super important, I believe, to align it around your company goals. It is fascinating how rewards and recognition can lower turnover, can increase recruitment, can drive sales, can increase customer service. So a well-designed rewards and recognition program can often help your organization achieve some of its biggest goals, but also solve some of your biggest pain. And then step three, it's really important to align the program around your employees. And I have some really tactical tips around this one, namely survey your employees, ask them how they want to be recognized, ask them how they want to be rewarded. And I'll share on screen in a few moments some examples around that. But let me dig deeper into step one. How do you align your rewards and recognition program around the mission, vision, and values? In summary, when staff are recognized for living a company value, they will for sure feel more connected to the vision and mission. From our observations, we've rolled out programs across all sectors. And there's one organization called Home Instead, for example, where after rolling out a rewards and recognition program, they saw a significant lowering of voluntary turnover by more than 40%. They'd rolled out a couple of other big programs in tandem. But when people feel appreciated for their good work and you're recognizing them for living the company values, there's a huge ROI to it. And then just on a side note, what I've always found just awesome or maybe amazing about well-defined company values is like you're kind of setting up really simple pillars or guideposts on the behaviors that matter in your organization. And when you're recognizing and rewarding people for living those values, you're going to see more of said behavior or more of the value. And I'm going to give you a really good example of this now. So there's an organization called Starbucks. I'm sure everybody's very familiar with this brand. I'm sure hopefully many of you like the organization. Some of you may have other feelings, but in summary, they have about 380,000 employees around the world. And they've rolled out an enterprise recognition program where they recognize a whole variety of activities. So up on screen, you'll see they have a green apron cards program. This is where they actually recognize staff for living the vision and more importantly, the values. And I'm going to talk about how this comes alive with a story in just 1 second. They also recognize things like community champions. This is for supporting and participating in community activities. John earlier had mentioned the importance of recognizing teams, assuming it fits your culture. So Starbucks also recognizes teams for high-performing teams. They recognize employee anniversaries, and they even recognize things like retail performance. So, building a great a culture that achieves its objectives. But going back to the first bullet point, the Green Apron program, which recognizes staff for living the values. When you set up a program like this, you're going to see some staff members doing an extraordinary job of living your organizational values. And let's talk about how this played out at Starbucks. So at Starbucks, up on screen, you can see the values that are important to that organization. The values being creating a culture of warmth, delivering our best in all we do, acting with courage, and being present. I'm going to talk about that first one, which is creating a culture of warmth and belonging. And I want to share a short story. So when you're recognizing this value, you'll see people doing extraordinary behavior around said values. So how does setting up a rewards program help Starbucks live and create a culture of belonging? So up on screen, you'll see a photo of two people. There's a photo of Crystal and a photo of Evie. The barista obviously is Crystal, the one in the green apron. Crystal works in Leesburg, Virginia, and one of Crystal's regular customers was a fellow named EB. EB was deaf, and Crystal wanted to ease EB's burden and make his customer experience effortless. So in her personal time, she took the time to learn American Sign Language. And eventually, when she had some confidence with American Sign Language, she handed EB a note which said, "I've been learning ASL just so you can have the same experience as everybody else." EB was so overwhelmed by this gesture, he had this note framed. And it was really sweet. Crystal explained her decision this way: if he's a regular and I wanted to make a connection with him, I should be able to at least ask him what he wants to drink. So like, what an amazing way to create a culture of belonging. Like, and what a fantastic hero story. So again, you create a rewards and recognition program, you align it around your values, you recognize people for living those values, and you're going to see extraordinary performance like this. And then there's some really cool side benefit. The story got picked up by the local media, by CBS. It was reported in newspapers. And obviously, Crystal is recognized and rewarded for her extraordinary performance. So are the staff doing a good job of living the values? I think in Crystal's case, you can certainly say yes, she is. Obviously, with 38,000 staff, they're going to see outliers, but what a cool story. What an amazing way to bring your values alive. So once you have these amazing hero stories, these hero epics, say in the case of Crystal, what I've observed, and this is kind of a bonus tip, when you have staff members who are doing an outstanding job, it's incredibly powerful to have senior leaders retell those stories to create hero epics. I'm just going to go ahead and read that quote on screen. When you recognize your people for extraordinary work, you tell a story, everybody remembers that moment. The person you recognize is thrilled and everybody else is thinking, I want a story told about me too. This is from Frank Blake. He's a former chairman and CEO over at Home Depot. He he grew Home Depot to 68 billion in revenue and 3 billion in income, which is certainly a huge achievement. And he credits a lot of that success to building a high performing culture around customer service, and recognition was a key component of it. Cool. So that was step one, aligning your program around your mission, vision, and values. Next up, we're going to talk about how to align your rewards and recognition program to your company goals. I was sharing with John prior to this call, like obviously I'm a CEO. I have slightly different, I love HR, I love people and culture, but I'm always looking like what's a meaningful way to connect HR to the impacts of the business. So what are the pain points we can solve, and what's the value we can add? And so up on screen, here's some of the most common pain points companies feel. This is from a Harvard Business Review article. As an entrepreneur, I have a bunch of entrepreneurial friends. I can certainly attest that they feel these pain points, but I suspect many of you out there also feel them. So some of the common pain points organizations have are around recruiting great staff, retaining top performers, maintaining customer relationships, so great customer service, and driving and increasing revenue. What's super interesting is a well-crafted rewards and recognition program can have a significant ROI to all of these goals and objectives. So just as a quick teaser, if you want to recruit great staff, for example, you can roll out an employee referral program. There's a company, for example, called InMobi. They rolled out a fantastic employee referral program, and they were able to grow employer referrals from 20% to 50%. Perhaps you want to retain more top performers. As I mentioned earlier, if you roll out a peer-to-peer program that attaches company values, you can see a significant lowering of voluntary turnover. Maybe customer service is really important to you. And when you roll out a customer service award, that'll result in your staff caring about customer service more. We have a Net Promoter Score award internally. It's a reward given out monthly for the best customer stories. And we also have reward staff every time we get a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 on a Net Promoter Score, which simply asks, how likely are you to refer us to a friend or a colleague? And then when it comes to driving and increasing revenue, which is something almost every organization wants to do, a great and well-crafted sales awards program typically has an ROI between 11 to over 100%. We have a totally separate webinar. It's pre-recorded. There's no cost. If you ever want to do a deep dive on this topic, we spent an hour showing exactly all the tools and tactics. So if you want to see how that's done, I'm going to pop up our first poll of the day. And if you want a copy of this, we'll email it to everybody who wants a copy. Give me a second. Yeah, if you want a detailed breakdown of how to build these types of program, I'm just going to launch this survey. Go ahead and click yes. We'll send you a copy of this webinar. Looks like fantastic. It looks like a lot of people want a copy of it. I believe we gave this webinar about a year ago today. So some of you may have seen it previously, but I think it's top-notch content. Awesome. So 92% of you want a copy. Amazing. That's good to hear. I'm going to go ahead and end that survey and carry on. Next up, I want to talk about something else I heard John mention is aligning your program to your employees. And this is something we've recommended previously, but one of the best and easiest ways to align it with your employees is to survey them, to ask, for example, how do they want to be recognized, whether recognition is important to them, whether they want to be recognized publicly or privately. And one of my favorites is how do they want to be rewarded? And from my experience, we've we've literally surveyed tens of thousands of employees to ask all those questions and many others. And the rewards one's super interesting. And so not surprisingly, some people want, like in healthcare, for example, giving people a spa day, a day off and a chance to go to the spa really matters to them. Cool, that's fine. Other times it's maybe like doing a vineyard tour with your partner, also awesome. Maybe it's a gift card. But what's most fascinating is a lot of times these rewards have no cost or low cost associated with them. And today I wanted to deep dive on some of those no cost, low cost rewards. And sidebar, I think we're actually going to do an entire webinar just on how to roll out a cost-effective program around no cost, low cost rewards. So up on screen are some of the kind of cute, sorry, I call them cute, but I think they're kind of touching and endearing rewards that often have no cost associated with them. So one of them is where you can invite the CEO to call the employee's mom. So let's say an employee does an amazing job, CEO can call the mom. And I've heard amazing feedback, both from this as a concept, but also in execution. The idea of a dream coffee week, again, this is just simply having a manager bring the employee a coffee for the entire week. For those of you who still drive into the office, things like VIP parking can be meaningful. A really playful, silly one is a director dunk tank. You get your senior leaders up on top of a dunk tank, and staff can whip apples and dunk them into the tank of water. Things like a paid day off, 4 p.m. Fridays, half days, lunch with C-suite, being able to attend a senior quarterly planning session, or even another good one is managers or colleagues wash your car for you. So lots of like really cool, fun, playful ideas. And then hot at the heels of this are things like swag can be quite popular and often has a low cost associated with it as well. So in summary, it's rewards and recognition. I was saying this also to John prior to the call, like, let's just remove employee rewards and recognition. If you can make the recognition moment deeply meaningful by understanding what matters to the person, they're going to remember you as the boss forever, and they're going to remember your organization also forever, because you took the time to get to know them. And we're social creatures. Human interaction deeply matters to us, and being cared for is the foundation of a fantastic relationship. Awesome. I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to be talking about a quick summary thoughts that we've gone through today. So what did we learn about today? We learned about some of the changes in business and organizations and new ways to engage the workforce. We talked about the need for new best practices and best fit opportunities, and the need to manage the tensions between meeting businesses and workforce needs and the increased complexity and presented simplicity. And also, I see a lot of comments rolling in. Thank you for those. That's awesome. Cool. So I'm curious, we're going to switch to QA now. But before we do that, we have two quick asks. The first, I'm going to put on my CEO hat now. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about bucket list rewards, we're happy to provide you with a customized, personalized demo. The team is also really, really good at sharing tips and best practices if you just want to get some education in your space. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a quick poll. If you do want to learn more about bucket list rewards, just please feel free to click yes, and we're happy to share information with you. We got a really smart team who's able to kind of lean in and provide guidance around this. So let this run just for a few more moments, and then John also has a pretty darn cool opportunity for you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. And we'll switch gears. And so, John, would you like to speak to this one, sir?
Brilliant. Thank you. Yes, of course. Jason, I love your examples. I must admit, I do tend to think more in terms of models and tools and frameworks and so on. Partly just because I do focus on strategic HR, and I think acting strategically, but particularly thinking strategically, does require a sort of level of sort of conceptual thinking and to be really clear what we're trying to achieve, and hence the need for things like objectives and principles and so on. So if that style of learning does appeal to you, I'd love to invite you to spend more time and to sort of join the Strategic HR Academy. We do have a course on reward transformation, where clearly I go much more deeply into the sort of content I've been talking about. So there's a course that includes sort of over 10 hours of content, really going through in detail those sort of best practices and the best fit approaches and how you can develop those, and giving you everything that you need to understand how you can transform reward in your own organization. We also do regular study groups, so sort of small cohorts of HR practitioners walking through the course together. So there's loads more details available on how those programs run, and there's a discount code for you as well if you'd like to participate. So again, there's a poll if you'd like to know more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. I saw a bunch of people taking advantage of that. So that's going to be fantastic. And now we're going to switch to, for those of you who want your HRCI credits or SHRM credits, I know sometimes people dial in, so I'm just going to dial in by phone. So I'm going to go ahead and read those numbers on screen. So for the HRCI credit is 595398. And then for SHRM, it is 22 UKQRW. And we'll be sending a copy of this presentation along with a recording as well to everybody who register for today's session. And lastly, we get to go to the Q&A. I see a couple of questions in the question window, and I also see some really thoughtful comments and some funny ones as well. Melissa Egbert said, we did a pie in the face on our COO and company president as a no cost, low cost reward. Awesome. As John was talking about earlier, I think culturally we have to choose the right rewards for our organization. Melissa, sounds like it was a hit with your company. And then, here's another great one for a comment from Jennifer. We had a manager swap their VIP parking spots for a day, which is really nice here in the desert to get a covered parking spot. I have no doubt that's an awesome idea and a nice little contribution for managers. Oh, and Donald said that you love the idea of having the CEO call your mom. Amazing. Cool. So I'm going to jump over to the questions now. Give me a second. Somebody asked, is the session recorded and will you get the slides? Yes to both. Here's a fantastic question. I might flip this one to John. So the question is from Soren. How do you see that Elon Musk's recent announcement that he basically does not allow for hybrid work will impact other business leaders? What's your take on that?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Soren. Can I also just say, Donald, I think, was asking about the name of the book. So I did respond to the question on that. That was John Boudreau, Ravin Jasuthan, their book, Work Without Jobs. So that's well worth reading. But yes, in terms of Elon Musk, well, look, I mean, I love remote working for sort of 15 years now, and I back to an office. It's one of the reasons I've worked for a long time independently in the way that I do. But I absolutely maintain and support the right of organizations to decide how they want people to work. I don't know Tesla that well, but I mean, because there's been a series of announcements like this, hasn't there? And certainly a couple of weeks ago, Apple was in the news, also requiring people to be back in the office. And I know Apple a little bit better. And they're a hugely collaborative organization, sort of fairly centralized, but in terms of sort of bringing everything together rather than being organized functionally or divisionally. And I think in that sort of organization where you want people bumping into each other and rubbing ideas off each other and sort of connecting all of those things together, and their workplaces are all really smartly designed to enable all of that networking to continue, I can see why they want people in the office. It's all part of that best fit approach to me. We don't all have to do the same thing. I think it's good for businesses and for individual people in the labor market that there are options out there. Clearly, the way that you introduce those sort of programs to an existing workforce is important, and working with your employees to decide what the solution is going to be as well. And I don't know what Tesla or Apple have done about that. But if the business believes that they need people in a workplace in order to make that business successful, that's an important consideration for employees as well as the business. It's people want to work in a successful organization, and sometimes that is going to require people to get together. I do think if that is the solution you come up with, ideally working together with your employees to come up with that solution, then you can clearly communicate it a lot better than Elon Musk did. And you may need to meet your employees' needs in different ways. You need to look at flexible working, 4 days a week sort of things, or unlimited holidays. There are other options that you can use to give your employees the same type of positive EVP that perhaps they're looking at from hybrid working. But if Elon Musk thinks he needs people together, he's a successful entrepreneur, I'd tend to support his decision.
Awesome, John. Thanks for that context. And it's going to be super interesting. Like, I think, again, having known a bunch of entrepreneurs, and Elon Musk is a bit of a role model for a lot of people, it'd be really interesting to see how this plays out. Do people copy that approach? You know what I mean? Like, I actually don't, I would agree with you that there's far better ways to communicate that type of initiative. And also Bucket List Rewards is actually a hybrid company, and we've seen no deterioration in performance. If anything, just the opposite. We're performing better as a fully remote hybrid company, which is awesome. So yeah, it's going to be super neat to see how this plays out in the coming years and months. Cool. I'm going to jump into the questions as well. So so John, you'd mentioned that research also suggests rewards needs to change. What would you suggest are the main insights here?
There's a lot. Question. But yeah, so look, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about transforming reward is, well, I do think, as I've covered in this webinar, everything's changing, life's changing, business is changing, reward needs to change as well. I also think there are potential issues about the way that reward works or doesn't work in organizations now. And I think it's quite interesting that if you sort of look at the trajectory that we're probably on, the future of organizations, those issues which are perhaps prevalent today are going to be even more magnified in future. So, things like, one of my key priority points was about, do you need to move or to build on individual incentives and move towards more team-based rewards? I think that's probably important for many organizations, certainly not all, but many, because of the changing nature of the point of performance in organizations. But it's also because the research, I don't go as far as some people. There's a lot in social media in particular about, individual incentives don't work, they kill creativity, they kill teamwork. And experiments in behavioral economics and so on absolutely suggest there are issues around individual incentives. But most of the research done with inside organizations suggests that individual incentives can work. So again, it's a best fit thing. You need to really understand the context you're working in and align your own rewards with the needs of the business and the needs of the employees, as Jason and I have been saying. But yes, the research definitely does suggest that team-based incentives tend to work better in many contexts. So there's a lot there, and I cover it all in the reward transformation course in the academy. So because there are so many studies around, so I do try to sort of curate those and make it as simple as we possibly can.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Yeah. It was a big, meaty question. I appreciate you working towards the specific answer there. I've got another question. You talked a lot about how organizations are thinking more and more about the employee experience. And I believe what I also heard was organizations should be focusing more on how to transform people.
Right.
Do you have any examples of companies that are doing a great job with the employee experience, and then also what are some of the things you're actually doing? That any stories you might be able to share in and around that point?
Yes, look, I mean, so employee experience is a huge. I mean, it's everything. It's the way the organization works. It's the culture. It's the employee life cycle from an employee perspective. That's definitely the way I see it. So when I was talking about employee experience, I loved all your stories about recognition, Jason, and absolutely, recognition is a core part of the way to provide an experience around reward. I love that there's a quote. It's not my quote, but I do love it about that you can recognize without reward, but reward should always be with recognition. Just rewarding people but not explaining why they're being rewarded is I wouldn't go so far as to say stupid or meaningless, but it's certainly it sub-optimizes the investment you're making. I mean, it's just dumb. Don't do that. You always provide recognition around it. So all of your examples, Jason, I mean, Starbucks, I just thought were brilliant examples of how recognition should work, and the experience side of reward. The transformation part, I think, is harder, and that journey is absolutely not going to be easy, and it does require considerable changes. There needs to be a deeper level of trust in organizations, so that you can sort of move from a focus on equality to equity. And I think that requires much deeper levels of transparency about rewards in organizations, for example. But it's not impossible. I mean, so I was an HR director, as Jason was saying, for EY back in the 1990s, long time ago. But we developed we had some client service principles already when I joined. And while I was there, we developed some people service principles. Again, it's this thing about trying to meet the needs of the employees at the same time as meeting the needs of the business. And we tried to embed those people service principles within performance management, so that process would become more of a sort of two-way negotiation around the employee deal. So we'd talk to people about what they'd need to achieve for the business, but we also asked them how they wanted to be engaged by the organization. And that was, 2 decades ago, before we had anything even approaching digital technology. So there aren't a huge number of examples around, and it's not easy, but it's certainly not impossible. It's more about the strategy and the intent than it is anything else. And if the intent is there, I think you can make it happen.
Amazing, sir. I'm looking at the time, and we've crept up to the end. And what I'd like to do now is maybe, John, I don't know if there's any sort of final comments from your side, but I'd love to invite those from yourself at a high level. I just wanted to say thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today and for all the participation and comments. That was amazing, as always. And I know John and my intent, as always, is to deliver a whole bunch of value. So I hope you had some good takeaways and ideas. But John, for you, sir, any sort of final comments or questions?
Well, just to say, Jason, thank you for inviting me on. I've loved the conversation, and yes, chatting with you a couple of times beforehand as well. I replied in the chat already that although recognition wasn't one of my top priorities, or I didn't list it as a top priority, it is. And it is one of the first thing that organizations should do to make reward more meaningful for their people. It's so useful. So I loved your examples, and great to have the opportunity to talk with you. Other than that, I mean, this is such an important agenda. All of those, in a sense, it's very logical that we haven't yet transformed reward along with everything else we do in HR, because reward has to align with all of those other things. It's also much more risky. The risk of getting reward wrong is huge. I mean, you can easily put a business out of business. But I do think we're getting to the point that the risk of not changing is starting to be higher than the risk of transforming. I do think we need to look at this. So for those of you on the webinar, please have a look at the Academy. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I've seen a couple of people sharing their LinkedIn addresses. Mine is the same, linkedin.com/in, John Ingham, no H in the John, just Jon Ingham. It'd be wonderful to connect with you.
Awesome. And with that, sir, why don't we move to wrap everything up? Again, thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic Tuesday, and thank you for joining us today. Thanks so much, John. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.